Hello folks and welcome back if you just joined us right here on Rev Evolution. And today we're diving into something really fresh, really bold, and once again making waves not only here in Singapore but globally as well in the SUV market. We're talking about the Jaecoo J7, and besides the J7 there's also the J6, which we'll be hopefully reviewing down the road. I mentioned earlier in my introduction, this is not an EV but a PHEV, and you're wondering, hey, what PHEV? Well, PHEV stands for Plug-in Hybrid Electric Vehicle. And the reason why we're very curious about this car, because we've heard so much about it, and especially its really crazy range. And we'll be talking about its super hybrid drive system, which we've heard so much about, and once again we'll be featuring during our in-car review. Well, this is really a mid-size SUV which is designed to really sporty aesthetics, which it really does have lots, and I really mean lots, of modern tech with safety, so many safety features, all this during the in-car review. And once again, and especially here in Singapore, value for money. But how does it live up to its hype? Well, we're here to find out on Rev. Yes folks, now it's time to check out the interior of the J7. First of all, the first thing that you do when you get nicely seated and all comfy in the cars, you notice that it really has a modern driver focus cabinet. And when I say driver focus, because I've taken out a couple of EVs already, and what I really didn't like is the way they set up the whole control system of the car itself. Because some of the cars that we've tested didn't have really much features on the steering wheel, which I felt that as a driver, I don't want to be spending too much time looking at the screen to do settings and stuff like that. But they actually have, for the Jaecoo J7, thankfully, you actually have some controls on the steering wheel, which I really love. And okay, now moving on once again to interior. First of all, you notice it has a lot of soft touch materials. The build quality, honestly, folks, really solid stuff. No plasticky rubbery stuff along. Really good solid interior, lots of leather all around, especially and also there's some contrast stitching on the seats, which I'll show you in just a bit as well. And one thing that you notice is you get a lot of sunlight in the car because it has a really huge, and I love this, panoramic sunroof, and with all that light coming in, especially on this rainy weather here in Singapore, really helps me with my shoot as well. Okay, and for the driver and passengers, you get lots of legroom, especially in the rear. I've had a couple of people sitting behind, and they really commented that they really love the space on the back of the car. And this, once again, is really ideal for those long getaways where you would just want to kind of stretch out your legs. That's really happening in the back and in the front as well. And in terms of trunk space, we'll be discussing that as well. There's quite a bit of ample trunk space, not as huge as you would like it to be, but once you push down all the seats, initially it gives you about 500 liters of trunk space, but once you push down all that seats, you get about 1,526 liters, which I think is more than enough for those really cool getaways up north. We're planning on doing some bit of camping or glamping, or we're putting on your golf equipment or even your bicycles as well. Well, okay, and that being said, now let's talk about some other features of the car itself. As I said, there's really tons of stuff, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this from the perspective of a motorist, okay, the driver itself, things that I really want to know more about. First of all, of course, you have the keyless entry with the HVAC start features, okay, which means that you can basically open the door, close the door, and do all kinds of stuff with the key. And also proximity settings, in the sense when you get close enough to the car, the doors actually unlock, which is really helpful, especially if you're doing a bit of shopping, your hands are really full, you don't want to have time to mess around with the key. Well, keyless entry really helps in this case. And now let's move on to the very important thing that, as a driver, first thing you notice is the multifunction steering wheel. As I said before, I've tested a couple of EVs which, they didn't have any functionality on the steering wheel, which really, to me, is troublesome, because, as I said before, as a driver, I really don't want to take my focus away from the road by messing around with that big screen, especially when it comes to functionalities. And with the Jaecoo J7, thankfully there's some features here which I can actually kind of put as favorites, things like your modes, your settings as well, which I can actually do on right here on the steering wheel as well. And to help you drive as well, we have the HUD, or heads up display which shows you your information once again right in front of you of the driver, which I really love, because as a driver I just want to really pay as much focus and attention on the road. Okay, so you get your driving, it shows you basically if you're using your active cruise control, it shows you the car distance lengths, the cars on the road as well, and lots of other information right here on HUD. In terms of display screens for the driver itself, we have a 10.2-inch LCD instrument cluster, which gives you all that really pertinent and really relevant and important information with things like your drive range, because this PHEV, once again, it shows you both your petrol range as well as your electric range and how much of charge you have left, your speed, and a whole lot of other information. Really fantastic looking screen. Of course, the main display itself, which is this really iPad looking display, which is a 14.8-inch touchscreen infotainment system, and this once again allows you to control all your features from your safety settings, your ambient light settings, your AC, everything that you want to control in the car. You can actually do it right here on your touchscreen information system, which once again, I'm saying we're going to run through that a little later on during the in-car review. In terms of safety and parking, that's one thing that I want to touch on as well. We have this really cool looking 540-degree camera. I've heard of 360, but 540, you know what I mean? Hey. So what you can do is you can actually, especially what I love about it is when you take those corners, right? The camera comes on and shows you everything around you, how far you are from the pavement, who's next to you, and this is really helpful, especially when you know, if you have motorcyclists at the side of you, you know, who you just want to be aware that they're actually there. So that's really helpful as well. In terms of creature comforts, well, we have the eco leather seats all around for driver and passengers as well. And for the driver itself, we have the driver himself. We have a 6-way electrically adjustable driver seat with lumbar support. And the other thing I really want to mention before I go any further, which I simply advocate for, especially when it comes to cars, is that these seats are actually ventilated, and really I love it, especially in the hot weather here in Singapore. You get that fan blowing in your back, you know, and especially if you're wearing a shirt, you know, you just feel so nice and comfy and having a wet back. So both ventilated seats for the driver and the front passenger as well. Okay, and for the other really cool features, we have things like your 64 color rhythmic front and rear ambient lighting. So you can actually control it to either depend on your, say example, you're in sports mode, so you can actually show red in different modes. So you can actually be mode related, or you can actually set it yourself manually. Or the other cool feature is you can actually set it to music, so while you're driving, the lights all keep on changing. Welcome back, folks, and if you just joined us, this is of course the in-car review, and the in-car review is all about where we talk about things that we didn't discuss in the earlier part of the video, things like your specifications, pricing and so on, and things that you as a motorist want to know. But before we do that, don't forget to smash the like and subscribe button. Okay, so here we go. First of all, this is once again the Jaecoo J7, which is a PHEV. To find out more information in terms of exterior and interior and all the other stuff, make sure you rewind to the beginning of the video. Okay, so if you happen to be living in Singapore, like where I am, the price to drive the car is going to cost you $214,888. Okay, and that includes all the rebates being thrown in, because the Singapore government has given EV motorists kind of a rebate of $41,000. So if you happen to be wondering how much that costs, about $44,000. So what's after minusing all those rebates, you still have to pay about $214,888. And in terms of road tax, it's going to cost you $1,096. And this car, of course, sits in the VES banding, which the government has given it, and this is the A2 VES banding. And in terms of colors, you have a choice of 6 colors to choose from. That being said, now let's jump into the car itself and some of the really interesting things like the specifications and the whole drive system of this car, which once again is all about being a PHEV. Okay, in terms of how big this car is in size and everything else, the wheelbase is 2.672 meters. It's pretty, I would say, for a sports SUV, this is roughly about the range it is. Turning radius, press it is about 5.5 meters, which is kind of normal as well. And the curb weight is 1.795 tons. And of course, this being having both an engine and a battery, you might expect the weight to be a bit heavy, and it is, of course. And now on to the more interesting stuff. As I mentioned earlier, this comes with a 1.5 TDGI hybrid engine, which is the 5th generation, by the way, with a DHT transmission, front-wheel drive car. And in terms of transmission itself, it comes with a super electric hybrid DHT. More information about that, I'm going to dive really a lot into that as well, which is why I'm trying to rush all these parts of the the review before I tell you more about that. And in terms of horsepower, combined horsepower of 341 bhp, and the torque is 521 newton meters of torque. In terms of fuel consumption, because once again this has an engine, so you really impressive numbers, 142 kilometers per liter, so that's really a lot of cost saving. Top speed is 180 kilometers, and like I said, for me personally, I'm not really a speed demon, so I'm not really looking to push as I drive. 0 to 100 is in 8.5 seconds. If you put it in full EV mode, it does about 90 km range, but I've actually done the test on it without. We actually ran it a bit earlier, and we managed to do close to 80 plus, which I think is a pretty close number to what the manufacturers are also getting as well. According to Jaecoo, Jaecoo has said that this car will do 1,200 kilometers, and that's based on WLTP, which is the world kind of standard on how they test EVs. And of course, what was actually done, basically, it was actually recorded that this car actually went as far as 427 kilometers, which is really impressive for any car by that standard. And in terms of battery capacity, this has an 18.3 kilowatt battery. In charging time, having a small battery, if you're talking about slow charging, about 200 minutes on a 6.6 kilowatt charger. And if you're looking at fast charging, which is a DC charger, you're looking at 20 minutes based on a 40 kilowatt charger. But personally, I wouldn't even want to use a 40 kilowatt charger. I'd probably use a 100 kilowatt charger and just do it in 5 minutes. In terms of safety features, this car really it just has tons, I think more than 30 safety features. This of course has things like your adaptive cruise control, and it comes with a really cool, what I love about it is this, it says 540 degree panoramic camera, and it really works excellent, really works well, especially when you want to take corners or you do parking. It really gives you that whole view of everything around you, and I think it's very useful, especially when you get tight spots when you want to know what's really around you. It also has a drive monitoring system, which kind of alerts you when you're not paying attention on the road, and a whole bunch of other technologies like your lane keep assist. Like I said, really tons and tons of safety features. Now let's move on to the drive modes. One thing that this car has, so when I say drive modes, there's two things I'm actually talking about. When I say drive modes, this car is actually capable of switching between an eco mode, a normal mode, and a sports mode. It's the name, I think it's very self-explanatory. So now let's talk about the really, what I call the meat of the whole of the J7 itself, which is its whole PHEV system and how that actually works. So with the Jaecoo J7, as I said, it comes with what we call the super hybrid system, or the SHS system, and it allows the car to go into two different modes, which is EV and HEV mode. When I talk about EV mode, we're talking about full electric range, which it goes fully electric, and it goes it can go fully on a battery for about 90 km, or maybe, like I said, I did about 80 plus. And when you put it in HEV mode, what happens is it goes into a series of this is, once again, there's nothing, you don't have to actually do anything. It's just basically you pressing a button and the car actually self-manages its
speed camera reported ahead.
Yes, speed camera. Yeah, so what happens when you put it in HEV mode, the car actually regulates its own, how it switches between all the different modes. So the first mode that you probably be in, and when you start up the car, is the pure electric mode, and that's basically when you go from 0 to 40 kilometers per hour. So it stays in pure electric. When you put it in CVs, when it goes to CVs drive, what happens is the engine actually helps to generate power, and it powers the motor. So the motor is actually moving the car, but the engine, your ICE engine, is actually giving it generating electricity for the car to actually run. So that's CVs drive. And then we come to parallel drive. So parallel drive, as just name suggests, you have both the engine of the ICE and the motor running parallel at the same time, and this happens usually between 7 to 80 kilometers per hour and above. In a nutshell, that is how this whole system works. And one real cool feature, which I actually forgot to mention earlier, is the fact that this guy has a fridge. That's right, fridge. Okay, so you can actually put in your soft drinks. Right. So that's a fun fact for you about the J7. Okay, so that wraps up basically, folks, overview what do I think and who is the J7 actually going to be for? Well, if you're looking for something which is stylish, of course, that's the first thing. It's really loaded with tech. You can tick that box as well. And if you're talking about pricing as well and what you're actually getting in this day and age, I think it is really it's really value for money. And we'll catch you again. This is Renee. Check out all the other things that we have for you on our show, whether it's lifestyle or motoring. And I will catch you once again on yet another drive right here on Rev Evolution. To catch you again, drive safe and stay curious.